Hey guys, I wanted to show you how I configure CoprHD to talk to the SMIS simulator and create virtual arrays, create virtual pools, and then allocate volumes from those virtual pools. So I have CoprHD running on the Vagrant box. So I have a Vagrant virtual machine that's OpenSUSE, has both CoprHD services and the SMIS simulator that I downloaded from the CoprHD wiki. And both of those are running on my virtual machine. And now I'm going to add the provider, which is the SMIS simulator. So we're going to call it SMIS simulator. And the host is the same IP as my CoprHD. My user, I'm using the Vagrant box that was created by an EMC employee, and it actually works really well. It's a single node installation, and you just basically, if you're familiar with Vagrant, you just type Vagrant up, it brings up the virtual machine, provisions it, and you have CoprHD running. It's really fantastic. So now in the simulator, it provides 10 different backends. We can see the storage provider shows that. They get discovered and populated into the storage systems, which have their own pools and ports. So if we look at the pools, it has both a SATA and SAS, nearline SAS and SSD pool. And amazing, they're the same size, which is pretty convenient. If we go back to the system and we look at the storage ports, it basically has fiber channel as well as iSCSI. So it has 4 iSCSI IQN identifiers. So these are basically iSCSI targets here. So what we would do is we want to use these, create a network, add these to our virtual array, and then be able to allocate storage from them. So the first part of doing that is to create a virtual array. Now virtual arrays are basically going to aggregate your storage from, you can take multiple physical backends and basically aggregate them into a single virtual array, which then you'll use to allocate storage from. So we're going to call this my VA1. The virtual array has automatic zoning, that's fine. Tenant access says grant access to all tenants. Default is all, so we're okay here. If you clicked on this, it would say provider tenant, and you could do other options, but we're going to keep it just just the default to all right now. So basically, it's asking you, how do I get this network connected to these storage systems? And so we're an IP network. We're going to do iSCSI. So let's add a network. We'll call it my IP1. And it's going to be associated with my virtual array. And now it says I have some ports that you need to assign to this network. Where do I find these ports? And so you can add host ports. We haven't configured any host yet. Or we can add ports that are on our backend arrays. So if we search for Clarion, and it has storage port A, and if you remember, it had both fiber channel and iSCSI. The IQNs are for iSCSI, so we're just going to select, if you select just one of these, you notice that these other storage systems have the same IQN, which typically doesn't happen. They're supposed to be globally unique, but at this point, we're just going to add this one, but it'll end up adding more because it's just going off the identifier. So if we add these two, we'll probably end up with 10 different backends here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, I can count, and that's what we have. So this IP network associated with this virtual array, I'm going to save that. Now we have this network, and if we go back now and look at our virtual array that we've started, it says, oh, I have one network, and I have 10 storage ports that you assigned to me, and within that, there's also 10 storage pools. Say, yep, I remember seeing that when I looked at the pools at the beginning. There's thick SATA, and then there's thin and thick available for provisioning, SAS, nearline SAS, and SSDs. So that's cool. That's what we want. Go back to our virtual array. And we also have 5 storage systems. Remember when we added that one IQN, it also was associated with 4 others. So we basically have 5 total storage systems. We're good here. We have virtual array. Let's save this information. So we saved our virtual array. Now we say, okay, from that virtual array, I actually have to have some sort of virtual pools inside of it, right? Because I can't just allocate from a virtual array. It doesn't know anything about pools yet. It won't go to the physical pools. We actually aggregate those into block virtual pools. So let's add one. Let's call it my VP1. Call it first virtual pool. You can call this whatever you want. Same with the name. It's going to associate with my virtual array. It says, I didn't find any pools for this, so I'm not sure what you're looking for. So because there's no protocol selected yet, we say, oh yeah, we want thin, we want iSCSI, and then it found 5 storage pools. Now remember, thin and iSCSI basically came from those SAS pools, right? So we had nearline SAS, SSDs, as well as just regular SAS drives. But if we say, actually, I want to do thick provisioning, because I want to allocate all the storage, it has 10 matching storage pools, and it can do those thick SATAs as well. Remember that we saw those in the pools. And so now we have the ability to do provisioning on thin or thick is what these pools support, but we're just looking for, let's say thick, and actually I just want to do serial ATA. I just want large, deep storage that's cheap. So that brought up our 5 matching pools. And so now if we allocate from this pool, and maybe we should call it thick SATA. That way we know, kind of have an idea of what we're doing when we provision from a pool like that instead of just saying my VP. So now we have a thick SATA pool, first virtual pool, provisioning is thick, pool assignment will be automatic. So it'll choose any of those backends. It'll use some filtering algorithm to basically decide which backend that goes to. But it'll use iSCSI, and there's 5 pools that it can pull from that'll basically weigh against each other when it actually allocates. So now we have a block virtual pool. The next thing we need to do is we want to look at the service catalog, and we can view the catalog. And for those of you who know CoprHD already, know that I'm going to get into trouble here, but I'm just showing you something you can do. We can create a block volume, and we get a yellow box here saying, I can't do this yet. And the reasons are you don't have an optional project to choose from, or there's required assets that you don't own or don't have permission, or it's busy, or it can't connect to the Viper backend server. This should be renamed CoprHD now. But anyway, what we ran into here is we haven't created a project yet. If you're going to allocate storage, it needs to be associated with a project. So if we go to, the tenant settings. So tenant settings has the idea of tenants and projects. We will add a project. We will call this research project. They always need lots of SATA storage. We won't enable quota at this point. We won't add a control list, but we'll just save it. Now we have a research project. Let's go back to our catalog and say, view it. Can we go back into the block storage services? Let's create a block volume now. Let's see if we get through that warning screen. There we go. So where are we going to pull it from? Well, we only have one virtual array. We only have one virtual pool we defined. We have one project we've defined. And let's call this volume for folding. And consistency group, we don't have any at this point. How many volumes do we need? How about just one to start? 10 gigabytes ought to do it. Let's order that service. Now you can see it's executing this. We can look at some of the steps, which at this point it's just creating a block volume using the virtual pool and the virtual array to basically provision from. And the tasks are complete. It should any minute now say it's good. So order successfully filled. That's great. We now have a volume. So if we look at resources, we look at our volumes, we have volume for folding.